Yeah, it's become summer's here. The 2 weeks of spring are over.
I know. It is a bad weekend for my air conditioner to go out too.
It's yeah. I mean, it could be a little worse. At least it's not in the middle of summertime. But
Oh,
yeah,
it could be
it's
worse.
rough.
It honestly, it hasn't. It's been out since like Tuesday,
Hmm.
and it hasn't been that bad until last night.
Yeah, yeah. It's the worst too. Is when you're hot at night because you constantly keep getting up.
Yeah,
At least in my case, I just wake up in a puddle and I'm like, oh, this sucks.
yeah. Last night was rough. Every night up till then, it's gotten cool enough that with the windows open, it's been manageable.
Yeah,
But it's weird because then in the morning you got to shut all the windows to keep the cool air in until the house heats up like an oven. Then you got to open them all up again.
yeah. Summers are weird out here in the
Yeah, because
sense
it's
that
it's still going down to like 58 degrees at night and it's 100 degrees during the day.
yeah, and that's one of the things that like keeps me from doing it because like I'm looking into like, oh, should I buy one of these like cooling mattresses and like the sheets that are they say, oh, they spread the heat around so that it doesn't all concentrate underneath you. But then, like you said, at nighttime it'll drop to like 60, so it's like,
Yeah,
oh, this is nice. It's like, what do I do? What do I do?
it's so weird.
It's a stupid problem to have. But hey, welcome to the Almost Next Man podcast. We're not 50 and 60-year olds.
No, no, no.
But
Just really hot.
yeah, I'm RJ or maybe I'm Blair Underwood. It doesn't really matter.
And I'm Matt, and we are here to talk Dazzler for our last few Dazzler stories we have before we start switching gears. Hey, before we start, you want to hear a fun story of white privilege?
Do it.
So I was driving the kid home from daycare the other day, cruising in the carpool lane. Police car pulls up behind me and toots his siren, pulls me to the side of the freeway. And I was legitimately like, it was enough traffic that I couldn't have been speeding if I wanted to. I was going like 45. And I was just like, I legitimately have no idea what I did. He goes to the side of the freeway, pulls me over to the shoulder, walks around the car on the passenger side, and looks in as he's walking around, knocks on the window. I open the window and I go, hey, officer, I know you hear this, but I legitimately have no idea what I did wrong. And he just looks at me and goes, yeah, when you drove past, I didn't see the kid in the back seat, and I thought you were driving alone in the carpool lane. I'm sorry, man. I shouldn't have pulled you over. And I was like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, you're good. Once I rode the siren, it couldn't like then tell you to go. So here we are. Get back out there. And then he starts turning around, walking away, and he turns back and goes, hey, this is a hybrid too, isn't it? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, oh man, you could have been there anyway. This is not my day today. I was wrong twice. And I was like, okay,
That
see you
up
later.
3 times. Damn.
See you later, officer.
White guy doing nothing in the carpool lane with his kid, and he's in a hybrid. Shh.
And the whole rest of the way home, the kid in the back seat just kept on going, I saw a policeman. And I was like, yes, you did, buddy. This was a big waste of time and so weird.
Well, I mean, at least he was a man about it. In a
Yeah.
lot of cases, like even if you were just like a dad with your kid, you could see him be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, just a mistaken identity. We're on the lookout for, such and such." But
Or
yeah,
just make something up and just go like, well, look, you were doing this, but I'm going to let you off with a warning this time.
yeah,
Like, he was
yeah,
just like, oh, this is not my day. And I was like,
yeah.
okay, officer, see you later.
I've been sitting on the freeway doing nothing for so long that I thought I saw something, but yeah,
Yep.
it was too quiet. He got nervous. He's trying to meet quotas.
I can't even fake a ticket for this. Just get out of here.
Yeah, don't tell my dad. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, okay, this was weird. Anyway, that was just my fun story from the week.
Yeah,
So I
this
guess
will
let's
be
get started then.
Yeah, this will be a little bit of a different episode because we have, I guess, a little bit of an encore for Dazzler before we move on to Firestar or another
Oh,
series.
look at how well that fits. Look at you using these music terms for
I've been,
Dazzler.
I've been thinking, but unlike Dazzler's
Oh,
encore, ours won't be 3 hours. This will maybe be 40 minutes to an hour. So
maybe some of these stories are pretty slight.
they're pretty slim, but they're a nice little bonus thrown in between. I gotta say, I think I like all three of them. I like one of them more than the others.
I
We'll
like
get
one of them less than the others. I'm 2 for 3, I think.
Okay. But yeah, these are all like little featurettes, I guess. These were featured in big issues like at the ends of them. Do you know how? Because like the Dazzler one, the last one that we'll do, I guess, is the last one from the Masterworks.
So we'll do that one last. Okay.
Yeah, because they
And
mentioned that one because that's one that we know that she's joined the X-Men.
yes, that's
And
after she's joined the X-Men.
yeah,
Okay,
and
then let's just start off by asking. I'm assuming that a lot of our listeners do, but do you know what classic X-Men is?
I don't, but I can take a guess because like looking at it looking at the issues you sent me and then doing a quick look up of the issues themselves, it looks like for the most part, they were reprints of like stories from, I guess was it like the late 70s or mid 70s that Claremont wrote?
Pretty much. So basically, X-Men kind of petered out at the end of the 60s. Nobody was really paying that much attention to X-Men.
Mhm.
And then Claremont picked it up. Well, I guess Giant Size X-Men with which was written by Len Wein, I believe, came out in 1975. Claremont picked up his run after that. But nobody really knew the X-Men. They weren't like a big commodity at the time. And they started getting bigger and bigger until they were, the most popular comic book in the world.
Right.
But at the time, there wasn't an internet with back issues on it. There weren't even really comic book stores to find back issues.
This is
There weren't
pre-Marvel Unlimited.
pre-Marvel Unlimited, pre-Marvel printing, bound editions of collections or anything.
Mhm.
So there were a lot of people that heard how popular the X-Men were and started picking it up mid Claremont run and didn't know what was going on. So Marvel started reprinting Claremont's issues from the beginning of his run,
Mhm.
and they called it Classic X-Men or X-Men Classic. It kind of switched back and forth depending on when you picked it up. And as a little extra incentive to get the collectors who were there from the beginning to buy it twice, each one of these had a little backup story, about 10 to 12 pages, sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less. And they did that until they caught up with, I forget what point they stopped.
Mhm.
They stopped the backup stories at some point because it just became a ton of work. And even some of the really early ones, they even made some edits to the story itself. Like originally, Nightcrawler turned invisible when he was in shadow, and then they
Right,
went
yeah.
back in those early issues and was like, he was just so heavily in shadow he couldn't be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of like that ability. I wish they kept it because it just seems like, oh, why not? It's one of those things. But
Why not have him be invisible also?
yeah, just but like in shadows. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
It is interesting.
Weird, but
But yeah, they gave him new covers. They all had backup stories. A lot of them are really good. They've collected them in a big omnibus of X-Men Classic that I really like, honestly. And they kind of flesh it out. They flesh out a lot of the story that was going on at the time also, because they state it's multiple times that like Storm and Jean are best friends. And you're like, when the did that happen? They've been on 4 panels together. And then a lot of these backup stories show like Storm and Jean hanging out. And you're like, oh, they actually are friends. Okay, cool. Thanks for retconning that properly.
fun.
Yeah. So 2 of those X-Men classics are Dazzler stories. So we're covering those today, starting with X-Men Classic number 37, which is mid Dark Phoenix saga. I don't know exactly which issue it is a reprint of because I didn't look it up, but it's got Phoenix and Emma Frost on the cover.
I have it open. It's a reprint of the first story from X-Men number 131.
There we go. X-Men 131. But we're not reading X-Men 131. We're just looking at the Dazzler backup story, which is called What Was Not What Will Be, which is
That
confusing.
was awkward. I'm glad it was as awkward for you to read out loud as it
Yeah.
was for me to read it when I sat down and you said, "Okay, read this one." I was like, "What? Are they doing the stupid whatever will be will be?" I think so with that song.
I maybe, but we're reading Was Not What Will Be, written by an early contribution to the X-Men by Fabian Nicieza, penciled by Rick Leonardi. Bob McLeod is our inker, and lettered by Joe Rosen with Mike Rockwitz on colors. And it is a story.
Yeah,
I will say, I think Fabian Nicieza thinks he's a little smarter than he is here.
there was a lot of word salad, it felt like, in this issue. I did like the overall kind of tone because it was very much like, even though this one's like a feature, it's still like it's still a good like 16 pages.
Yeah, no,
Because
I
like
like this one.
it feels kind of long, and it's also just kind of a slice of life issue, which
That's exactly what it is.
I love seeing those from time to time because everything can be so frenetic, this big thing's happening and you got to do this and time's running out before you have to do this thing. It's like, no, 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 this was just kind of Dazzler's night, like a whole night out.
Yeah, and it's super fun. It's Dazzler on a Friday night after a show, and that's it. That's all it is.
It also did remind me of like rambling conversations in your early 20s because that's
Yes,
very much what what this became.
a little too smart for its own good, I think.
It's very much like it's I know if there's anyone older who listens, I know they're probably like, "Oh, what do you know? You're mid 30s." But like even looking back like 10 years, it's like, man, some of the things that you used to like I used to talk about and say, it's like, yeah, even just a 10-year gap, it's like, man, you have no idea. Like if
Yeah.
you could go back and just kind of tell yourself a couple things, it's like, oh, okay. And I imagine I'll feel the same way in another 10 years.
Oh, for sure.
But it's very much got that feel of a bunch of 20 somethings thinking that they're being real deep and talking about different things, but kind of like they have some valid things that they're saying, but they're also kind of missing a larger picture because they're so young.
Oh yeah. And I mean there is that. I also think it's a little bit of Nicieza waxing philosophical
Hmm.
a little more than he needs to.
But I love they feel like
It does.
such actual conversations.
Well, they feel like genuine pretentious music snobs
Yeah,
at
and
times.
they
you know,
feel these characters feel like real people.
New York
It,
art people.
yeah, and it's definitely not a Dazzler as just a, side piece to tell this goofy story about
No,
romance.
not at all.
It's like, no, this is a young 20 something and what she talks about with her young 20 something friends.
Yeah, I do really appreciate that. But
Yeah.
it starts out with Dazzler on stage, singing "Ring My Bell,"
Ring
finishing her set.
I'm sorry. I like hearing a grown man say, "Yeah, he's singing Ring My Bell," just
Singing "Ring My Bell."
nonchalantly. Just it's yeah, that's what happened, but it also feels funny coming out of the mouth.
Oh yeah, and I will say we are in continuity here because this is definitely does not take place after the Dazzler solo series.
Right.
This is not she's gone back to New York. This takes place during her struggling music days in New York. She's in the white disco suit, the blue face makeup. She's got her disco ball necklace and her sweet, sweet mirrored boots.
Yeah. I imagine this is like around the time of the Dark Phoenix saga, just probably before like her solo series starts.
Maybe where it takes place.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because I mean, the like you mentioned, the disco suit is just so retro that
Yeah, no, that's
you know,
fair.
it's got to be before.
I wish
it
they
comes.
went a little deeper into the solo series. Like I wish we got to see Beefer on drums back there, not just like a nameless guy.
Right. Well, that's why I kind of
I
figured
know
it
it might
has
be
to be
before, I know.
It
But
feels that
but
way.
still I think
Yeah,
it'd be a fun place to see some of her cast pop up,
absolutely. Yeah.
which
I
I
thought,
think is a missed opportunity, but whatever.
yeah, I thought we might get that, but nah, not so.
No, none of that.
Yeah.
She talks about her weekly routine, how she's got, and good kudos to her. She's got standing gigs at like 4 different clubs throughout the week.
These are I guess, some good days in New York
Yeah.
because it never seemed like that when we were reading her solo series.
Tuesday, it was Zappa's out on Staten Island for some outdated Aerosmith and Zepp. Wednesdays, it was some progressive Elvis the Sea, and Graham Parker for folks on the island at OBI East. Thursday's gig at Rutgers Barn had been canceled. Friday is disco night at L'Amour's Whoopity-Doo.
Elvis the Sea, I think that was
Costello?
Elvis Costello, I'm
It's
pretty
gotta
sure.
be.
But they're just trying to be hip and
So
trendy
hip.
with
So
the way
hip.
that they say things because they did say Zepp. So it's like,
Oh, yeah.
okay, just say Led Zeppelin, please.
Dazzler finishes with a light show on stage. Everyone's wowed. The manager, talks about how you gotta let me in on how you do these light shows one of these days. And
The manager makes me laugh because he looks kind of like a brown version of the inflatable pilot from Airplane. He's got
he
like
does.
he's got a very rounded head.
No real discernible features.
Yeah, and his expression is just It's like, man, he looks like the airplane pilot.
He
The autopilot. No,
kinda does.
autopilot.
Auto,
Keith the
Otto the
autopilot.
autopilot.
Yeah.
Joey, have you ever been in a Turkish prison?
And I gotta say, also, this is where Nisi is, I think, is trying a little too hard with a New York accent. Dazzler responds, "One of these days, gags, you'll figure it out for yourself."
Yeah.
Allie has never said "figure" before.
No, she wasn't that character, but I guess
She was
he's
summa cum laude.
yeah, he has some fun with her, and she talks in ways that I've never heard her talk before in this issue. But it's like, oh,
Or
okay.
again.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, and then she asks what time it is, and 1:45. She's so late because their drummer did a 10-minute drum solo and she's mumbling under her breath about how she can never let him do it again. She's so late. Gotta go. Shouldn't have added those extra verses to Knock on Wood and Stayin' Alive. She just wrote verses to these songs?
Yeah, how does that work? Staying Alive, I guess there is like a big instrumental portion of that song that you can just sing whatever. But part of me is very curious about what Dazzler was singing about.
How did she add an extra verse?
I was sliding around on my skates and shining the blinding. Ain't got no money for bread. I don't know, weaving in whatever was relevant to her life at the time.
Have you seen the Taskmaster episode where Frankie Boyle brings in his BG Ouija board?
I have, yeah, Frankie Boy. I'm trying to remember which season he was in.
He was on the season with Ivo Graham, I believe.
Oh yeah,
and Mae Martin.
yeah. I need to rewatch that.
It's a great season.
It's been a while because that's the one where the thing I remember most about that was one Dara O'Brien. Well, wait, was he in that?
That was a different season.
Was a different one.
This was the one where Jenny Eclair drove a boat into a wall.
Oh, Brace.
Brace.
Yeah, I remember that a lot. I remember that one episode where
and Kyle Smith Bino was fantastic.
Yeah, they picked on her for being old one episode. It was hysterical. And Kyle had that one episode with what was it? One on the bus stand for me, which just sticks in your head forever.
It's so good. But he brought in the BG Ouija board.
I remember the name of it. I just don't remember what he did with it. So
he basically just made a Ouija board that he put pictures of the Bee Gees on. And then Greg looked at and went, R.I.P., 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 hello, Barry. And it was great. Anyway, Taskmaster, great show.
Yeah.
Back to Allie. She's got her skates. She sees a caddy driving by, grabs the back fin. And she's hitting the streets.
Skitching. She skitches. She grabs onto it and just rides it on the street as they go speeding, which is something I remember I think that got kind of big in like the 90s, the early 90s.
With skateboards, not roller skates though.
Yeah. And then it stopped because there was a lot of injuries and fatalities. Yeah. So
a lot of death happened.
Yeah, but I do vaguely remember that as a kid, hearing like news reports about it. But the car that she grabs onto, also, we get a little moral lesson with our Dazzler.
Jesus, what is this?
Oh boy, yeah.
She grabs onto the fin of this caddy that's speeding through New York City, says, "Hi folks, hope you don't mind me hitching a ride on the back of your Batmobile here." And one of them turns around and just goes, "Frickin' hey, babe, want a brew?"
Nope.
Hands her a beer.
The 80s were a different time, I guess, or the early 80s.
Apparently, she gives him a whole lesson about drinking and driving, how that's not helping anybody.
Well, the thing that also scared me was that she says, no, thanks, kid. It's like, oh boy.
Yeah.
How young are these guys? If
the whole thing is super shady.
Yeah.
I do like that she's trying to teach him a lesson, so she just goes, "One of these days you'll see the light," and then she shines a light at him to be like a supernatural, "Oh, we've seen the light" sort of thing, but also blinds the drunken driver of Miss Cadillac.
I thought for a moment when she said, "You're gonna learn one day when you wrap this around the pole," that she was gonna make them wrap it around the pole. I thought that she was like foreshadowing, like, "Hey, you guys are gonna crash.
Ready for me to crash you?
I'm gonna make them crash."
It's crazy. It's such a crazy thing.
This is a super dangerous move, but anyway, it just scares them, and it just
scares them.
They all toss the brews, like all of their hands go back, and you see the cans.
Great. They stop drinking. They start littering. Okay, Allie.
This was your doing, Allison. All right.
And then she grabs onto a bakery truck to hitch ride the rest of the way. waxes poetic about how gorgeous the Brooklyn Bridge is with the Twin Towers there in the background.
Yeah.
Which,
When she grabbed the bread truck, this was what I also thought briefly. Oh, this Alison gonna solve some of her meal problems here, her empty cupboard problems. No,
nope.
no, just hitching a ride.
Just hitching a ride. Talks about how much she loves the Big Apple, loves the village, so much to do. Skate, skate, skate.
It is pretty
Sees a
bittersweet.
guy
Like,
opening his trench coat.
yeah, oh yeah, that moment. It's kind of weird because, like you mentioned, you see the Twin Towers in the background of the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's like, oh, it's kind of bittersweet to see like these landmarks that aren't there anymore in
Yeah.
some of these old comic books, and then like two panels later, oh, there's a guy opening his trench coat. Oh, Dazzler's getting flashed. Cool.
Yep. Oh, definitely. They say that he's selling hot watches, but that is not what's happening there.
Yeah, yeah. We've been to New York. We know what happens when that happens.
She skates through Washington Square Park and ends up at the Nighthawk Diner where she meets three really pretentious friends.
Yeah. So I also loved the name of this because it harkened back to the old Nighthawks picture, that famous.
Oh yeah, this is where I was talking about that I think that Phoebe Nicieza is trying to be a little smarter than he actually is here. It's not subtle.
It's not sneaky, man.
It just says Nighthawk real big and
Everyone-
looks like the diner picture.
Everyone knows that picture. It's awesome. I'm glad you paid it homage, but yeah, you're not trying to slip anything under someone's.
No. Then she and her friends get there, and Allie orders her food, talks to the waitress that they just call Grunt, which, I mean, the waitress, all she says is, so they call her Grunt, but still seems pretty demeaning for no reason.
It's pretty mean, but she's also got to be sick of them. Like, she probably wasn't always Grunt. She was maybe Gladys the first time that they came.
Oh, I'm
But
sure.
they kept coming and they kept coming and they kept staying for 6+ hours and only getting coffee. So she's serving them for hours and hours on end and not really making anything. So gradually Gladys just became Grunt.
And they are there all night.
Oh yeah.
They're there all night, and they're just talking about everything under the sun. They're talking about homelessness. They're talking about music. They clean up their own dishes because they're the ones who made the mess.
Weird and intrusive, but all right, I guess if they let them do it, that's fine. It may have also just been kind of a bargain where it's like, you guys are going to be here all night and you're only going to get coffee. Come on.
But yeah, but they talk about the environment and their accountability for keeping the environment nice, which is pretty progressive for when this comic was written. They talk about everything. Like they just keep on chatting all night long.
The thing that was kind of charming when she first got there was when she first got there, they were like, "Hey, you gotta ditch the makeup, Alison."
Dude, fix your face.
They peer pressure her into wiping her face paint off. And then what was like the first conversation they had? It was
The first one was about music,
like
I
Buck
think.
Rogers. Yeah, music.
Oh, did you see Buck Rogers last night? You're right.
Yeah, and it's all over the place. Like one of them kind of makes a blind joke, I guess,
Yeah.
but like at his own expense. And then his friend calls him tacky. They've got an interesting.
Oh, is the guy with the glasses blind? I
Yeah,
guess
that was.
is.
Let me look at the name real quick. There was. Am I looking at the right one? There's Alison. One of them was like
One of them's Harry,
Harry. Yeah, Harry.
but not the good Harry that we've read about in many, many comics.
Nah. Harry.
One of them calls herself Arrogant Cur,
Yeah.
which is the punk girl in the white fedora.
Yeah, they called her Kerr. I think her name was Criswell, and then the other character was Andy. So
And they just call Dazzler Disco
yeah,
the whole time.
yeah, Andy, Harry, Criswell, or Kerr.
And they just chat. That's it. That's really the whole thing. It sounds like I don't like it. I actually do. It's a really nice just picture of Dazzler's life and what it's like to be, in the nightlife performing and then just having that adrenaline that keeps you up all night, meeting up with friends.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really nice story.
It's cool. Yeah, they kind of like on each page there's like a time frame. It's because like from 225 to I guess 245, they talk about their parents.
Yeah.
And, oh, well, mine wanted me to do this. Mine wanted me to do that. It's like, oh, well, I wanted to do my own thing because I could have had the easy route and gone to law school with all my dad's connections, but that just wasn't what I wanted to do. And then from like 2:45 to 3:25, they talk about homelessness. And this conversation was, I'm glad it was only a page, because it was just kind of, it didn't make any sense. I didn't get what their point was.
Nope.
Like, oh, do you mean to tell me you don't avert your eyes when you meet someone who's been displaced? And it's like, well, I can't because I'm blind. And there's a big chuckle. And it's like, well, no, I try not to. I try not to break contact because there's still people.
Her talks about how she was homeless at one point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It is interesting that they all the people at this table clearly know that Allie is a mutant also and has powers. Because they ask her straight up, like, do you ever feel guilty for not joining the Avengers or something and strutting around the city in spandex and glory, like accusing her that she could be doing more? And, it's interesting.
Yeah, it somehow comes up with like accountability, right? From like 3:25 a.m. on to like 4:05. So they get the good half hour in this, it seems like.
Yeah.
When they all yell gear shift, is that something when they're about to order, or is that something when they know that they're about to change their conversation?
I have no idea.
Yeah, they yell
They all
gear
just
shift.
scream
And then
gear shift.
They spend like an hour, it looks like, in silence, just sipping coffee.
Kind of yawning and just being there. And then all of a sudden it's 5:12 in the morning. They chat again. This one is, what's this one about? This one is...
Capitalism.
Yeah, just capitalism in general.
The lines between the haves and the have-nots is disappearing.
Then we cut to 6:21 a.m. to one of them just shouting, "I'd be a super anarchist." Okay. Bold.
I was like, well, wait, what's happening here? And I guess this came back to, I guess, superpowers. Like, what if they all had abilities, and what would they do with them? And one of them just pick something that's not an ability. Okay.
Yeah. And the coffee's cold. Shift change is coming up. Time's up. The cook says. So it's time for them to leave at about 6:30 a.m. and Allie puts on her skates and heads on home. At 6:28 a.m. a new day begins. Tells her friends she'll see them next Friday, and that's it. That's really it.
Yeah, she closes out declaring, "I choose to never be a superhero. Believe it." Off into the night. End of the story. So
I enjoyed this one.
Yeah, it's one that, again, it's a nice, fun change of pace, and it's clearly from her more formative years where she was just like, yeah, I'm not doing this superhero thing. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it.
No, but it is fun.
It's a nice one to like slip in between it would have been really nice to slip it in between some of the earlier issues we were reading. So I'm kind of, well, I guess I understand in the grand scheme why they didn't do that, but I would have rather had that than the Beyonder.
Oh, for sure.
Had that then. Well, we kind of needed Dazzler in the movie.
What about the computer lady?
Yeah. Well, I kind of like the computer lady one.
Oh, I was so bored with the computer lady.
It was just
so boring.
It was. I still get a chuckle out of thinking, yeah, I called you here. I just need someone to talk to. But now that I told you everything, I got to kill you.
No witnesses. Hi, I called you here to be a witness, and can't have that.
Yeah. Just want to have a little girl talk. But that's a good stopping spot for us to get everything compressed and then come back with the last two shorts.
Well, here's a question for you. A little on-air production meeting. Do we want to call this as an episode? And did we go long enough to make these 3 like mini episodes instead of one giant, packed episode with 3 stories?
Well, this one was 30 minutes and it was 60 pages, and the next 2 were 8 pages. So
maybe we do 2 episodes. Let's split it into 2. This is it for this week.
Yep.
You listen to Almost Next Man. This was Classic X-Men number 37. That's it for this week. Come back next week for Classic X-Men number 38 and something from a Marvel fanfare issue that I've forgotten the issue number from that I will have in front of me momentarily.
Yep. Thanks again for listening. You can find us at all the usual podcast spots: Google Play, Spotify, not Audacity. Audacity is the program I use to edit this. So YouTube, all the places that you usually get podcasts, iHeartRadio, all that fun stuff.
You ready for this? Easy to remember. Classic X-Men 38, Marvel Fanfare 38. Join us next week for both of those number 38s. And we will see you then. Follow us on Instagram, Dazzler Podcast, and we'll see you next week. Go for it.